The rain came down in relentless sheets the night Ronkadissa knelt outside the tall iron gates of the Ose estate. Two small boys pressed tightly against her sides, their teeth chattering, their eyes wide with a fear no child should ever carry. Please, she cried, pounding her fist against the gate. Someone let me in. I need to see him. I need to see Malik. Inside, headlights swept across the compound as a black SUV rolled through the second entrance. Malik Ose stepped out first, tall, composed, his tailored coat still smelling of the airport. Behind him, his fiancée, June, adjusted her scarf and laughed softly at something he'd said moments earlier. It was supposed to be a perfect homecoming. Then she saw the woman at the gate. Malik's step slowed. His jaw tightened. 5 years. 5 years since Ronk had vanished without a trace, without a letter, without a single phone call. He had mourned her. He had buried an empty casket for her. And now she was on her knees in his driveway, drenched, broken, with 2 little boys clinging to her coat like their lives depended on it. Ronk. His voice cracked in a way June had never heard before. Ronk lifted her head, mascara running down her cheeks, and for a moment, no one spoke. The rain kept falling. The household staff by the gate froze, unsure whether to step forward or hang back. Malik, she whispered, they're yours. The words hit him like a blow to the chest. He looked down at the boys, identical, maybe 4 years old, both staring up at him with eyes so familiar they made his knees weak. His eyes. His mother's nose. His stubborn chin. Jiun's smile had vanished completely. Malik, she said carefully, what is she talking about? He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because in that moment, 5 years of grief, guilt, and unanswered questions came crashing down on him all at once. Before we go further, drop a comment and let me know where are you watching from tonight. I want to see how far the story travels. Malik motioned for the gates to open. Whatever this was, it wasn't going to happen in the rain, in front of the entire street. Inside the mansion, the air was thick with tension. Ronk sat wrapped in a blanket, her hands trembling around a cup of tea she hadn't touched. The twins sat close beside her, watching everything with quiet, careful eyes, the kind of eyes that had learned too early not to trust strangers. June stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the scene like a woman trying to convince herself it wasn't real. Start talking, Malik said, his voice low, controlled, the voice he used when he wanted answers and wouldn't accept excuses. You disappeared. No calls. No messages. I buried a casket with your name on it, Ronk. And now you're back with children you say are mine. Ronk's lips trembled. I didn't leave you, Malik. I would never have left you. I was taken. The room went still. Taken by who? He asked, stepping closer. I can't, her voice broke. If I tell you everything right now, it puts all of us in danger. Please. Just let me stay until morning. Just one night. I'll explain everything, I promise. But if certain people find out I came here, find out where I've been hiding, they won't just come for me. Her eyes flicked briefly, painfully, toward the twins. They'll come for them too. Malik's hands tightened at his sides. Whatever composure he'd built over the last 5 years cracked just slightly at the sight of fear on her face. Real fear, the kind that couldn't be faked. June finally spoke, her voice quieter than usual but sharp underneath. Malik, can I speak to you? Alone. They stepped into the hallway, out of earshot, though not far enough that Ronk couldn't hear the tension crackling between them. Please tell me you're not seriously considering this, June said. A woman disappears for 5 years, shows up out of nowhere with 2 children, and you just let her into our home? She's scared, June. Genuinely scared. I know what fear looks like on people. This isn't a performance. And if it is? What if this is exactly what someone wants you to believe? Malik's silence was answer enough. He didn't know. That was the problem. He didn't know anything anymore, not after tonight. June studied his face for a long moment, searching for something, reassurance, maybe, or a promise that nothing between them had changed. She didn't find it. Not fully. Fine, she finally said, voice tight. One night. But Malik, if those boys really are yours, this changes everything. You understand that, right? This isn't a small thing you can brush past. I know, he said quietly. But even as the words left his mouth, his mind was elsewhere, on Ronk's trembling hands, on the exhaustion carved into her face, on the way she kept glancing toward the door like she expected someone to walk in any second. Later that night, after the twins had finally drifted to sleep in one of the guest rooms, Malik found Ronk sitting alone on the veranda, staring out into the darkness like she was waiting for something. "Who's after you, Ronk?" he asked, his voice softer now. She turned to him, tears glistening under the moonlight. "If I tell you," she whispered, "you're not going to like what it means for you, or for the woman standing behind you tonight." Malik's chest tightened. He had no idea just how deep this secret ran, or how close danger truly was. He had no idea it was already inside the gates. If this story already has you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button right now and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss what happens next. Comment Part 2 if you're ready to find out who really took Ronk away 5 years ago, because the truth is closer than anyone in that house realizes. Morning came slow and gray, the kind of light that made secrets harder to hide. Ronk sat at the breakfast table, still wrapped in borrowed clothes, watching her sons eat quietly while Malik stood by the window with his phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and clipped. "I want everything," he said into the phone. Every flight record, every transaction, anything tied to her name from 5 years ago. Today, he ended the call and turned to find June watching him from the doorway, her arms folded, her eyes tired from a night of no sleep. "You didn't come to bed," she said. "I couldn't." Because of her, or because of them? June's voice wasn't angry. It was worse than angry. It was quiet, careful, like she was bracing for an answer she already feared. Malik crossed the room and took her hands in his. "June, I need to know the truth before I know anything else. You understand that, don't you?" She studied his face for a long moment before nodding slowly. "I understand. But understanding doesn't make it hurt less." Before he could respond, one of the twins, the quieter of the two, looked up from his plate and spoke for the first time since arriving. "Are you really our dad?" The room went silent. Ronk's spoon froze halfway to her mouth. Malik knelt down slowly until he was eye level with the boy, his throat tight. "I think I might be," he said gently. "But I need your mother to help me understand some things first. Is that okay?" The boy studied him with the same careful eyes his mother had, then gave a small nod and returned to his food, as if that answer was enough for now, even if it wasn't enough for the adults in the room. If you're a parent watching this, imagine hearing that question for the first time. Drop a heart in the comments if this moment hit you the way it hit me writing it. Later that afternoon, Malik called Ronk into his study, the heavy door closing behind them with a soft click that felt louder than it should have. Files were spread across his desk, papers Ronk recognized instantly, and her stomach dropped. "Where did you get these?" she whispered. "My people work fast," Malik said. "There's a wire transfer from 5 years ago, the week you disappeared. It came from an account linked to Damilare." Ronk's face drained of color. "You weren't supposed to know that name. So it's true." Malik's voice was low, dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with violence and everything to do with betrayal. "He was my business partner, Ronk. I trusted him. And you're telling me he's the one who took you?" "He didn't just take me," Ronk said, her voice breaking. "He made me disappear because I found out something about him. Something that would have destroyed everything you built. He told me if I ever came back, if I ever said a word, he'd make sure you never saw me or those boys again. So I stayed hidden. I raised them alone, in silence, terrified every single day that he'd find us." Malik's hands gripped the edge of his desk. "Then why now? Why come back after 5 years of silence?" Ronk hesitated, and in that hesitation, Malik saw something new. Not just fear. Guilt. "Because he's dying," she said finally. "Cancer. Stage 4. And before he goes, he wants to make sure the truth dies with him. He sent someone to find me last week. That's why I ran here. That's why I couldn't wait any longer." Malik felt the floor shift beneath him. Everything he thought he understood about the last 5 years, about his own company, about the people closest to him, had just been rewritten in the span of one conversation. But that was only the beginning. Because as Rank spoke, Neither of them noticed June standing just outside the study door, her hand frozen on the handle, her breath caught in her throat as she absorbed every word through the thin wood. Damilare. The name meant nothing to Ronk. But it meant everything to June, because her father had done business with that very man just 2 years ago, a business deal June had quietly helped broker without ever asking too many questions about where the money truly came from. Her hand trembled as she stepped back from the door, her mind racing. If Malik ever found out how close her family's fortune was tied to the very man who tore his apart, there would be no coming back from that. No wedding. No future. Nothing. She pressed her palm to her chest, trying to steady her breathing, trying to decide whether to tell him the truth or bury it the way Rank had buried her own secret for 5 years. She had no idea that keeping quiet would cost her far more than the truth ever could. That evening, as the house settled into an uneasy quiet, Malik stood alone on the balcony, staring out at the city lights, his mind spinning with questions he wasn't ready to voice out loud. Somewhere out there, a dying man held answers that could unravel everything he'd built. And somewhere inside his own home, someone he loved was carrying a secret that would soon force her to choose between protecting her family's name and protecting the man she claimed to love. Neither of them realized how close those two secrets were about to collide. If this story has your heart racing right now, make sure you're subscribed because part 3 is where everything starts to unravel. Comment Team Ronk or Team June, depending on who you think deserves Malik's trust the most. I genuinely want to see where this fanbase lands. 3 days passed in a strange, fragile peace. Malik moved through his mansion like a man carrying 2 separate lives, one hand steadying Ronk and the twins, the other still reaching for June, though her touch had grown distant, her eyes distracted in ways he couldn't quite name. He didn't know yet that she was drowning in a secret of her own. It was late evening when June finally found him alone in the garden, the twins' laughter drifting faintly from the house behind them. She'd rehearsed the words a dozen times, and none of them felt right, but she knew silence would destroy them faster than the truth ever could. "Malik, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice trembling in a way he'd never heard from her before. "And I need you to let me finish before you say anything." He turned to face her fully, sensing the shift in her energy immediately. "Okay. 2 years ago, my father closed a shipping deal with a man named Damilare." She watched his face change the moment the name left her lips. "I helped arrange part of that deal. I didn't ask questions about where his money came from because I trusted my father's judgment. I swear to you, Malik, I didn't know what that man did to you. I didn't know about Ronk. I didn't know about any of it until I heard you two talking through that door 3 days ago." Malik's jaw tightened, his mind spinning through the implications. "You've known for 3 days and said nothing?" "I was scared," she admitted, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Scared of losing you. Scared of what this would mean for us. But I realized tonight that hiding it would make me no different from the man who destroyed your family in the first place." The garden fell into heavy silence, the kind that stretched every second into something unbearable. Malik studied her face, searching for deceit, but found only guilt and fear, the same fragile honesty he'd seen in Ronk days earlier. "I need time," he finally said. "Not to punish you. To think." June nodded slowly, wiping her cheeks, and walked back toward the house alone, leaving Malik standing beneath the darkening sky with the weight of 2 women's truths pressing down on him. He had no idea the hardest conversation of the week was still ahead of him. The next morning, a car arrived at the gates that no one had been expecting. Word had reached Damilare, weak and frail from his illness, that Ronk had finally resurfaced. And rather than send someone else to silence her, he came himself, escorted by a nurse, his once powerful frame now hollowed by sickness. Malik met him in the same study where he'd learned the truth days before, his voice steady despite the fury simmering beneath his calm exterior. "You took 5 years from my life," Malik said quietly. 5 years I can never get back with my sons. Explain yourself. Now." Damilare lowered himself into a chair, his breathing labored. "I was protecting my empire, Malik. Ronk discovered financial records that would have exposed years of fraud, Fraud that would have taken down both our companies, yours included, since your name was tied to certain contracts you never fully reviewed. I panicked. I made a choice I've regretted every day since. Regret doesn't give me back 5 years with my children, Malik said, his voice sharp with restrained anger. No, Damilare agreed, his eyes glassy with something that looked almost like shame. But I can give you the truth now, fully, on record, so no one ever questions Ronk's name again. And I can make sure everything I own that was built from that fraud is signed over to secure your son's future. It's the only thing I have left to offer. Ronk, standing quietly by the door with the twins pressed close to her sides, felt something inside her chest finally loosen after 5 long years of carrying fear alone. For the first time since that night in the rain, she allowed herself to imagine a future where she wasn't running. But she had no idea just how much this confession would change everything that came next. Within the hour, papers were signed, statements recorded, and for the first time, Ronk's name was cleared publicly, her disappearance finally explained to the small circle of people who mattered most. Damilare left quietly that afternoon, his nurse guiding him back to the car, a broken man seeking peace before his final days. That evening, Malik found Jiyoon sitting alone on the veranda, exactly where Ronk had once sat trembling in the dark. He sat beside her without a word at first, letting the silence settle between them. I'm not going to pretend the last few days haven't changed things, he finally said. But you told the truth when it would have been easier not to. That matters to me. Jiyoon turned to him, cautious hope flickering in her eyes. So where does that leave us? It leaves us here, he said gently, choosing honesty from now on, no matter how hard it gets. Inside the house, the twins had fallen asleep on the couch, tangled together the way only children who had known too much fear could sleep, finally safe. Ronk stood in the doorway watching Malik and Jiyoon on the veranda, and instead of jealousy, she felt something closer to gratitude. Her sons had a father now. A real one. That was enough. Weeks later, the wedding between Malik and Jiyoon took place in a quiet ceremony, with 2 small boys standing proudly beside their father, and Ronk watching from a respectful distance, finally free, finally at peace, finally home in a life built on truth instead of fear. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most teach us the value of the people who choose honesty when it's hardest to give. If you learned anything from Ronk, Malik, or Jiyoon's story, drop your biggest takeaway in the comments below. Tell me honestly, who surprised you the most in this story? Like this video if it kept you hooked till the very end. Subscribe if you want more stories like this one, and don't forget to check out the other videos on this channel because trust me, the next story might just hit even harder.